Hello and welcome to today's webinar. This webinar is part of a series focusing on the recently developed curriculum in sustainable resource management. This curriculum was commissioned as part of the Doing What Matters program by David Esmaili, the Deputy Sector Navigator for Energy, Water, and Materials. The course curriculum features an instructor guidebook, resources, and 21 lesson plans with PowerPoints covering materials management, recycling, composting, reuse, and zero waste activities that focused on promoting upstream reduction of wasteful practices and materials consumption and disposal. Today's webinar is part 2 of a 4-part series designed to provide an overview of the curriculum for faculty and administrators interested in offering the course. Parts 2 through 4 will feature the subject matter expert content developers and provide information on some of the more complex topics covered in the curriculum. Each lesson will provide for Q&A time so that attendees can ask questions relative to the topics being presented. Today's class will be a more in-depth discussion on zero waste. This covers 5 of the course lesson plans, including an introduction to zero waste for communities, zero waste for businesses, as well as the market development and economic aspects of zero waste. Our speaker today is Gary Liss, who is one of the leading experts on zero waste policy in the world. Mr. Liss has over 39 years of experience in the solid waste and recycling fields. He has documented zero waste businesses, developed zero waste community and business principles, and drafted zero waste plans for communities. Gary has worked on more zero waste community plans than anyone else in America. He has developed economic analyses as part of zero waste plans in Nelson, British Columbia, Palo Alto and Oakland, California, Telluride, Colorado, and Austin, Texas. Mr. Liss has conducted economic analyses of resource recovery parks in Del Norte County and San Benito County, California, and Waveney, UK. Mr. Liss has also participated in over 20 citywide solid waste and recycling system procurements from both public and private sectors. So at this time, I just want to let you know if you guys have any questions, you can click to raise your hand. You can also type comments in the question box. At this time, I'd like to pass it over to Gary.
And good morning. Thank you, Jonathan. Really appreciate you participating in the program, and let's get started. The first message about zero waste is addressing the introductory comments. We'll be looking at what are the 3 components of the definition of zero waste, how businesses and communities benefit from zero waste, and we hope students can cite several examples of businesses that have already achieved zero waste. One of the most powerful things about zero waste is the leadership that businesses are providing, and when you can highlight to people that different companies like General Motors and Disney and Pets Vineyards, large and small businesses are moving to zero waste, it really gets their attention that there's something significant going on here. There's lots of activities and resources, as Judy highlighted in the last presentation. Throughout the curriculum, we've provided detailed documents with URLs for key resources. In the zero waste realm, 3 of the key organizations are the Zero Waste International Alliance, U.S. Zero Waste Business Council, and Zero Waste USA. Zero Waste International Alliance was set up in 2002 to develop worldwide standards for zero waste, has done that, and if you go to that website, that is basically what is meant by zero waste in the world, and we're now having people throughout the world recognize and adopt the zero waste definition developed by the Zero Waste International Alliance, ZWIA. The U.S. Zero Waste Business Council certifies businesses as meeting those ZWIA zero waste principles. There are other groups out there that certify businesses meeting zero waste to landfill, landfill free, but the Zero Waste Business Council is the only one that certifies them as meeting the ZWIA international standards. And Zero Waste USA's focus is on communities, working on helping to develop zero waste for communities. As far as reading assignments, we stress, again, understanding where ZWIA is coming from on the definition, principles for both businesses and communities, and the zero waste hierarchy of highest and best use is a very valuable tool for understanding what to pursue in what order. And this, the assignment ties in with lessons 9 and 10, looking at either a local business or community that is making strides to implement zero waste or significantly reduce their waste, and will be part of the educational materials of both the Zero Waste Community and Zero Waste Business capstone projects. So we want to share local success stories and research a business that is very similar to the type of business that is part of the capstone, and looking for examples outside the local area if you can't find anyone locally. When we've done zero waste community plans, we've always found a business that's either at zero waste, near zero waste, or on their way to zero waste. They may not realize it, they may not call themselves that, but as you see through the presentations today, we believe that virtually everywhere around the country there are businesses that are leading the way and in the forefront of moving towards zero waste. The workbook includes a copy of the Zero Waste Business Principles as a particular focus of this session, as there's another session as well on Zero Waste Community Principles. In the intro class, I'd like to tie zero waste back to reduce, reuse, recycle, highlight that that's one of the most well-known phrases in the world, and if we were really reducing, reusing, and recycling, we'd be at zero waste or darn close. So really the focus is first on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, and redesigning the rest. That's what zero waste is about. That's the elevator speech. That's the simple message when people walk away from the class that they can share with their colleagues and friends. But there's only one formal definition of zero waste that is internationally accepted and has been peer-reviewed by environmental, recycling, and zero waste leaders around the world, and that's this definition in front of you from ZWIA.org. It has 3 key parts: that all discarded materials are designed to become resources for others to use. We don't want to burn or bury those resources, and we want to eliminate all discharges to land, air, and water, and that's summarized as no burn, no bury, no toxics. When we look at the definition, it says we want 0 emissions to land, water, and air, but the key measure of performance towards meeting that goal in the definition is embodied and stated in the Zero Waste Business Principles and the Zero Waste Community Principles as 90%. If businesses and communities divert more than 90% of their discarded materials from landfill incineration in the environment, they're at zero waste or darn close, and deserve to be recognized and certified for that significant accomplishment. When we say no burn, and you hear terms like incineration, waste to energy, plasma arc, pyrolysis, there's all sorts of terms out there. What we really distinguish is it's thermal systems that are of concern when we say no burn. So any facilities that operate above ambient biological temperatures more than 200 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius is what's of concern. We support biological systems, chemical, other systems that work with physics and natural principles to address getting materials back into the economy, getting materials back into the soil. We don't support thermal systems, and that's the really key measure of what zero waste is about. So I'm going to ask people to write into the chat box what are the 3 key components of zero waste. If you could write those into the chat box without looking back at any notes you took. Okay, so while you're doing that, I'll continue on. one answer came in as reduce, reuse, recycle. That's not what we're looking for. That is the informal description of what zero waste is. But when we're talking about what are the three key components, I should be clear of the formal definition that came in. Yes, no burn, no bury, no toxics or emissions. Thank you. Okay, so what's driving zero waste? Zero waste is really tied closely to the whole issue of global warming and climate change. EPA has documented for over 20 years those connections, have many publications on their website at epa.gov, and there's many other reports out there. If you Google IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, they've studied this exhaustively. Some of the messages that EPA highlights is that landfills are one of the largest sources of greenhouse gases. Methane is the gas that's the majority of what's produced in landfills. Methane acts 21 to 72 times more potently than carbon dioxide in creating the greenhouse effect, 21 to 25 times more potently in the long-term 100-year horizon on which alternatives, strategies are considered for addressing climate change. But most importantly, it acts 72 times or more more potently than CO2 in a 20-year horizon. It acts faster than carbon dioxide. Now, in the recent years, there's new efforts at looking at short-lived climate pollutants. In California, the Air Resources Board has a short-lived climate pollutant strategy that they're considering adopting that would include getting all organics out of landfills in order to address climate change in the short term as a key priority. The President has a special task force on that. The Paris climate talks focused a lot on short-lived climate pollutants. So this is a really important part of why zero waste is catapulting to the forefront of climate change policies and actions. We also highlight the wasteberg, where for every ton in front of us at a municipal landfill, there's been 71 tons disposed along the way upstream through mining, manufacturing, and distribution of products. That's why we can't recycle our way out of this situation. We need to reduce those impacts upstream. We need to reuse products and packaging as many times as we can. That's what zero waste is all about, focusing first on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, and redesigning the rest. There's a key model that EPA has out there. If you go to epa.gov, look up climate change, and then look up calculators. They call it the WARM model for solid waste. That WARM model highlights what the impacts would be if you did different things to recycle more and waste less. Applying that WARM model to California a number of years ago, we found that if we recycled and composted all the remaining discards in California that are still being landfilled, even after the state achieved at that time a 59% waste diversion rate, if we recycled and composted all those materials, it would be the equivalent of taking all cars off the road. And most people understand that transportation is a huge impact on climate change, and that's what we're underscoring through this message, that we need to address and reduce those impacts upstream is a critical part of what zero waste is all about. And we talk about upstream and downstream. The difference is between the point of consumption. So it's up from where you're using it, the product or package, and down from where that's discarded after use, after the end of life of that product. For businesses, there's many drivers that are, in addition to climate change, that have been stimulating a huge interest in business for zero waste. First of all, and probably foremost, is that it saves money. Every zero waste business we've documented has saved money. They save the most money through eliminating wasteful practices that reduce. They save significant money through reuse systems by setting up reusable shipping containers. Reusable pallets is some of the low-hanging fruit. On the reduce, one of the low-hanging fruit is right-sizing, eliminating airspace being hauled for charges by garbage companies. And by right-sizing, you're not paying for services that you don't need performed. Recycling and composting can save money if the rate structures have been structured right by the waste haulers and or the community. But all zero waste businesses have documented they've saved money, and they need to include the avoided collection, avoided disposal costs as a key engine for helping them reinvest in new programs needed to meet their zero waste goals. Zero waste benefits also reduce liability. Usually ask the audience how long are businesses responsible for their waste when it leaves, and the answer to that is forever. Many people know that. A lot of people don't. Under CERCLA, the Superfund Act of federal government, businesses are held responsible. When a landfill leaks, those businesses are, they go to the landfill, look at their records, they see how much was contributed, by whom, over what period of time, and then they send them a bill for their share of the cleanup costs proportionate to how much they contributed. So that's a really important part for COOs and CEOs of businesses to hear that that's a liability hanging out there for them and an impetus for them to reduce the amount of materials going to landfills. It increases efficiency, a huge driver for zero waste. It's all about efficiency. Again, eliminating those wasteful practices, the right sizing of their garbage and recycling services is a key part of that. But it's also looking at why are they buying stuff to begin with? Is there a better way of doing something? And one of the excuse me, zero waste businesses I validated for Zero Waste Business Council had a full-time efficiency person on staff looking for how they can be more efficient as a company. That's what zero waste is all about. It's all about waste not, want not, our core American values of being as efficient in our use of resources as we can. It's about reducing climate change, greenhouse gas emissions, providing a marketing edge. A lot of businesses want to tout their green credentials, sustainability credentials, and so now that's what's moving them to get certification by a third-party entity so they can show that they're not greenwashing, that they're doing the right stuff for the right reasons. Can also produce clean energy, not through thermal systems, because thermal systems are cause problems, both health problems and other problems, but biological systems like anaerobic digestion are supported by the zero waste movement as another tool to use in meeting zero waste. But we do underscore that you can save 3 to 5 times more energy through reduce, reuse, recycle, and compost than you can by producing energy. So the production of the energy is more a sidebar in some communities and some businesses. They really like the idea of producing clean energy, and if you want to do that, anaerobic digestion is the way to go at this current stage of our knowledge. Zero waste also responds to the business concerns about reducing litter to oceans and watersheds, and that's a major driver for bag bans, styrofoam bans, which is known as expanded polystyrene, and other types of efforts trying to stop the flow of materials into the oceans and watersheds. And from a business perspective, it's the right thing to do. There's more and more companies that are trying to do the right thing. We now have B corporations and other tools, which we'll talk about later in this presentation. So we talk about in class for them to share about a business they know that has taken at least one step towards sustainability, and how is it recognizable to the public, and what are the benefits to the company from doing that. So are there any questions at this time? If not, we'll continue on. For zero waste communities, here we're looking to look at the zero waste community planning process, how that can be initiated, and how to examine what services are missing in your community to achieve zero waste. There's some great resources here. The Zero Waste Solution is probably the best text out there that gives an overview of zero waste and a 10-step plan to achieve zero waste, particularly for communities. I wrote a chapter in there on zero waste businesses as well that highlights how valuable zero waste businesses are for communities, to highlight, to get people to understand that zero waste is a very important goal, not a theoretical idea that has no value. There's the Yahoo group we have for zero waste communities. Zero Waste Connection is another web-based tool for connecting community, people working in communities on zero waste. Zero Waste focuses on reducing and reusing, so I'm highlighting WeHateToWaste.com here as another example. There's a lot of tools and resources out there on zero waste lifestyle. If you Google zero waste living, zero waste lifestyle, you'll find all sorts of resources out there on that. This video from Calgary is a nice overview of an overall solid waste system. Various community plans are great models. We worked on most of these in one capacity or another. And just as a tip for all of these URLs, people keep changing their websites, so if the URL doesn't work, just put the name of the document in Google, and you'll probably come up with the new location of that. For reading and assignments, we suggest the City of Los Angeles new sustainability plan, which they capitalize LA in, as you see in this slide. But it's a really nice overview of what big cities are doing. New York has recently done what they call the One New York City plan, which has a similar chapter on their efforts to move towards zero waste. And in the LA plan, they have a chapter on moving to zero waste. As far as the assignment, we're suggesting continue to build on prior work and connect your research to other problems, particularly from a community perspective. Sometimes the biggest motivator for zero waste is not that they're having a problem with landfilling or a problem with recycling. It's that they're trying to address climate change or sustainability or create more jobs or deal with the local economy. The first zero waste plan in America by a community was Del Norte County, funded by the U.S. Department of Agriculture Forest Service, because that 30,000 population county in the remote regions of Northern California had lost 44 of its paper mills. All of its paper mills were closed, and the Forest Service funded the Zero Waste Plan as a way to find other resources in their community that create jobs. But one of the key drivers we've highlighted is climate change is a key part of it. So connecting with climate change, understanding those connections is really important. The workbook also includes sample community zero waste timeline, and the benefits to communities are getting all those benefits to businesses that we talked about earlier, and it's one of the fastest and most cost-effective ways that local governments can reduce climate change, create green jobs, help their businesses, promote local sustainability, promote local food, nutrients back to the soil, and protect the health of residents. So I like to stress that businesses are leading the way to zero waste. businesses get all those benefits we talked about, and what community wouldn't want to give those benefits to their businesses and their community and help them achieve all these great successes. Communities are pursuing zero waste all over the world, large communities, small communities. And in California, the California Integrated Waste Management Board in 2001 adopted zero waste as one of their 8 objectives in their strategic plan for the state. As a result, over 30 communities in California have adopted it. All the major cities in California now have adopted. San Jose, San Francisco, San Diego, Sacramento, Los Angeles have all adopted zero waste as a goal. Small communities, suburban communities, all different urban and rural areas are all adopting it. Throughout the world, we're seeing a huge interest. Italy is leading the way. Over 200 communities in Italy have adopted zero waste goals, and we're now seeing some of them have already achieved over 80 to 90% waste diversion from landfills, incineration, and the environment. So this is another question for students to talk about in class. What communities are they familiar with that have adopted a zero waste goal, and for them to share something that they notice that demonstrates it. Usually one of the things that is most noticeable is at those communities, airports, public buildings, the visibility of recycling, composting, and trash containers all in one place to get materials from the public at public events. You see that increasingly at stadiums, at public events and venues. So even communities, even where the communities haven't adopted zero waste, we're seeing those types of demonstrable tools that are helping people get to zero waste in those areas. To accomplish zero waste by a community requires a planning process. This slide highlights some of the key elements of that, starting with reviewing the existing system, figuring out how to reach out to the public. Zero waste works best when everyone in the community is involved and engaged through an active stakeholder outreach process. But how that is structured varies widely by community based on their tradition and approach. Then looking at what is the value of what they're throwing away and what's missing in that community. We call what's missing, or the gap analysis or a needs assessment. Those are services that could be provided by someone else if there's a missing service, if they don't have C&D recycling, if they don't have composting facility. Those are gaps in the services needed to get to zero waste. We call those service opportunities. That's what the service opportunities analysis is about. At zerowasteusa.org, there's some documents that talk about these tools, the commodities and service opportunities analysis. The next step is to address those gaps. What policies, programs, and facilities are needed? We usually present those as a menu of options for the community staff and stakeholders to say what they would like to see addressed and in what priority order. Once those are figured out, we look at the economics and impacts in terms of creation of jobs and greenhouse gas impacts, and then come up with the implementation plan, including a timeline, budget, and low-hanging fruit for quick success. So for students, we ask you to ask them what pieces of zero waste are missing from their communities and 3 things that they could do to move towards zero waste. A sample case study from Austin, which is really a market leader. A lot of zero waste was happening primarily on the West Coast until Austin in 2007 started planning and developing the zero waste strategic plan that we helped them develop. And in the Resource Recovery Master Plan that they developed in 2010 to 12, they more clearly articulated this strategy for a phase-in of meeting goals to get them to zero waste. with detailed plans being revised every 5 years, and the priorities were outlined in that plan. If you get to the Austin Resource Recovery Master Plan website, that was over $1 million project. They did research of the best available practices all over the country at the time, and there's a wealth of information there if you're looking at what the status is of technologies, practices, policies, programs, facilities all around the country. Any questions on the community focus? Okay, market development is the next piece, zero waste market development, and what we're looking at here are resource recovery parks, other types of market development programs adopted by state and local government, and different social media tools that are out there that can be very helpful in moving towards zero waste. We've got lots of resources again. The resource recovery parks is a key part of it. The Austin Materials Marketplace is a really exciting effort to use the resources locally in closed-loop systems, and that's an important part of future zero waste, is really seeing, instead of shipping resources overseas, 80% of all the materials recycled in America are shipped overseas. We need to rebuild our ability to use those resources locally. Over half of the resources that we're discarding are naturally appropriate to use locally, including C&D, construction demolition debris, organics, and reusables. Over 50% of what we're discarding could be easily used locally, and those are things that we need to really focus on. Then for the other materials, that's where the Austin Materials Marketplace comes in helping to give examples of that. There are 2 sites here for the Museum of Bad Design, for both the one in Campanaria, Italy, and in the UK. And these are ways of trying to identify what are some of the problem materials that are being discarded, and instead of banning them, actually working with businesses to contact them to let them know, did you know that your product or package is a problem for us? And then working collaboratively to try and figure out better ways of dealing with that. The Resource Recovery Parks is a key tool for zero waste. This primary article URL I tried last night doesn't work, so I used the second additional information URL to get to the information about that at the CalRecycle website. And for the assignment, we suggest you identify possible resource recovery parks or eco-industrial parks in your community, identifying places that might be suitable, and where businesses could be co-located that could work together to optimize reuse and recycling together with each other. Some of the ideas for market development, the Resource Recovery Parks is about co-locating reuse, recycling, composting facilities in one place for where all those feedstocks from the community are provided in one place, and then those materials are either used on-site to produce new products that can be marketed or sold for use in agriculture and replenishing soils. And the Resource Recovery Parks are co-locating reuse, recycling, composting, collection, processing, and manufacturing activities. The ones that are naturally evolving at transfer stations and landfills are co-locating the reuse, recycling, and composting processing facilities. That's the most common resource recovery park. And some smaller ones like San Luis Obispo co-locate boxes to collect materials or locations to collect materials of all different types in one location, so that materials can be discarded for reuse, recycling, composting purposes that are the majority of materials that are brought to those locations. Residual separation and research facilities are another concept Paul Connet has particularly advocated for, and this is like the Museum of Bad Designs, trying to look at what went wrong, what's a problem with these problem materials that can't reuse, recycle, or compost, and then try to figure out research new approaches to addressing that. Natural zero waste systems is using biology, chemistry, understanding natural systems more, and we have some details coming up on that. State and local market development tools have been adopted as well, will be that are highlighted in this portion of the training. We also look at keys to funding for some of these issues, a look at purchasing as a key tool for helping to drive the marketplace. Walmart, when it adopted zero waste as a goal many years ago, it turned to its suppliers and said, we're for zero waste, how are you going to get us there? And they put it primarily onto their suppliers to figure it out, and now they're at over 80% worldwide and 90% diversion in some countries. Pretty impressive use of market pressures, supply chain management, and zero waste purchasing. And then material exchanges, we talked about the Austin Marketplace as an example of that. So this is another question we ask, are there facilities locally resembling resource recovery parks? The clue is your local transfer stations and landfills are typically co-locating reuse, recycling, composting facilities because there's no other good place to locate those. So that's what we're really looking for there. But there may be other places, local places that you can drop off your household hazardous waste, trash, recyclables, all in one place. This is a diagram of Paul Connet's idea of the residual screening and research facility. And the key thing there is the bottom yellow, the research centers, ties with the universities, with R&D groups to figure out how do we apply biology, chemistry, physics, natural principles. If you get into this, it's all about the next generation of Nobel Prize winners and new major corporations are going to be the ones that figure out that we go beyond just chopping things up and baling things using mechanical processes, which is the main way we recycle in America today, and really getting smarter about the biology and the chemistry and natural principles to solve these problems. The natural zero waste systems, this is promoted by ZERI, the Zero Emissions and Research Initiatives at zeri.org. Dick White highlighted in a case study there, coffee growers in Colombia, how they used to throw away all their coffee plants as waste. When they approached it from a ZERI perspective, they had earthworms grown on the coffee plants. Earthworms broke up the lignin in the coffee plants. They could extract enzymes from the earthworms. The worms themselves could be chicken feed, and then the materials that were previously wasted are called the substrate here in this diagram. After the earthworms have eaten that material and broken down the lignin, which is what makes trees and plants strong to stand up, when the earthworms break those down, then that material can actually be cattle feed, animal feed, and if it's had all the lignin broken down, then the animals don't create methane gas, because the methane gas is a product of incomplete digestion in the animals. So if you've broken down the lignin before you feed it to cattle and animals, then you're eliminating another source of methane, which is one of the actually major sources of problems for climate change, coming from animal feedstock feedlots is a big problem. Then the manure from those animals can go in an anaerobic digester, producing biogas for heating, and shiitake mushrooms is mentioned there because the shiitake mushrooms also break down the lignin in the plant matter. So using earthworms and or shiitake mushrooms to break down the lignin enables you to produce the additional products and use it as better cattle feed. And then the digestate coming out of the digester can be then brought back to used as a soil conditioner, fertilizer for gardens and that nature. So the natural zero waste systems is another approach. This is particularly geared to agricultural systems like breweries. This one in Southern Africa had as its slogan, good beer, no chemicals, no pollution, more sales and more jobs. They produce 7 times more food, fuel, and fertilizer, 4 times as many jobs, and 12 more products compared to conventional beer producers. It's a fully integrated biosystem with 40 different biochemical processes using everything from heat, water, waste, and CO2. So those are examples of different ways of harnessing the value of the resources that are being discarded. Tools to stimulate those are getting state and local market development tools to help people to reinvest products and materials to local uses, to use incentives like bans, requirements, and minimum content to reinvest in the local economy, and to have could operate primarily from the feedstocks of another business, or just one feedstock from another business might suffice, and to explain that product and the benefits that could come from that. Again, this is a great graphic from EcoCycle, zero waste leader in Boulder, Colorado, to talk about how we need to get beyond the landfilling and onto zero waste. Any questions on that? Okay, on to zero waste business. Okay, for zero waste business, we're describing businesses, zero waste plans, the format for those, the goals, how different contract and agreements can be restructured, the importance of waste audits and zero waste audits and the difference between them, and how important leadership and training are, as well as supply chain management and relations with vendors are an important piece of zero waste. Again, some great resources here, some that you've seen earlier, but some new ones like Conscious Capitalism and the Business Guide to Sustainability. These aren't zero waste books so much, but they're about, they provide a backdrop and support for zero waste being pursued by businesses. Similarly, the B Corporation isn't about zero waste as a requirement, but those corporations use the triple bottom line as a force for good. The leader in the business world for zero waste is the U.S. Zero Waste Business Council at uszwbc.org. There's a lot of suggestions for assignments here on completing zero waste audits and plans, and whether you're doing the capstone on zero waste business or zero waste communities, this is particularly helpful. The community groups can use these as examples of why the community should go forward. The business groups should be really getting to the heart of what a zero waste plan will look like for a business. Clearly, it's great for businesses. We highlighted some of the benefits to business earlier. One of the things I try to do in all these courses is ask people repeatedly, at least 3 or 4 times throughout the day, what are the benefits to businesses of going to zero waste, particularly after we pass the slide, a couple slides, because it's really important to understand that businesses are leading the way to zero waste, and zero waste is good for business. This is a business-friendly message. You don't want let your bottom line go to waste. It's about efficiency, forward thinking, increasing the bottom line, smart approach to resource management, lowering price of raw materials, creating a better reputation, and decreasing liability. It is a similar list to the one we saw earlier. It's really important throughout the zero waste discussions, not just in the intro class. Keep asking the students, why is it good for businesses to pursue zero waste? Because that's one of the most important messages that they can get to help them in the future sell zero waste to both businesses and communities. Some of the partners and resources for pursuing zero waste are looking upstream to suppliers and supply chain management, like we talked about with Walmart, community partners, government and utilities, with vendors, putting in your purchasing agreement specific clauses that require them to take back products, do other things. And one business, they say, we don't want you to submit any proposals or contracts in writing on paper. It's all electronic, and we are putting out all of our bid requirements, our specifications electronically. That business saved 2 file clerks in a file room. We're able to reassign the staff to do other things just by focusing on electronic purchasing, electronic records. You'll hear a lot about electronic medical records. They're on the forefront of really the paper-free office that we've heard about for 30 years is really on its way now, and zero waste is really benefiting significantly by those efforts, and there's many benefits of pursuing those things. A key message for zero waste businesses is understanding that for the average business, there's usually 9 typical generating sources. Not every business has all of these, but it's really interesting to find that most have these functions, whether it's a whole area of the business, depends on how large the business is, but these 9 generating sources are really critical to look at when you're trying to understand what's being wasted. You want to go to the sources and find out where are things going wrong, why is it being wasted. So you go to these generating source areas and find out why are things being wasted. Can you stop wasting it by doing something differently? Can you reuse stuff by setting up reusable packaging or reusable shipping containers, for example, or can you recycle those materials that are discarded? Again, these 9 areas are critical for success in both zero waste plans for businesses and understanding how to get to zero waste at businesses. So for students, we suggest you identify key components for zero waste business capstone, identifying the partners, points of generation, and missing information needed to figure it out. A sample zero waste goal for a business was that they hope to achieve zero waste by 2020 with an interim goal of 75%. They reached the 75% by 2 years early and 90% by the year later. 90% is being considered zero waste or darn close for certification, but it's not the end point. We encourage people to continue beyond that, continually improve, and beyond zero waste to a restorative economy, to giving back. and doing even better is the next step beyond zero waste. We ask students to discuss businesses' mission, social priorities, and how they relate to zero waste. In some of the zero waste businesses we've been to, they haven't yet adopted the zero waste goal, but they have other sustainability and climate change goals that are very much a part and parcel of what we're trying to strive for zero waste. Similarly, to get zero waste adopted, one of the easiest things for businesses to do, and communities for that matter, is adopt a one-liner in their sustainability plan or their climate change plan that we adopt zero waste as a goal and we'll develop a plan to implement that. That one line in a climate change or sustainability plan can lead to a whole lot of progress. Any questions on that? For zero waste economics, we look at incentives, how to harness the avoided costs of a garbage collection and disposal, garbage rate structures, how to structure those, and the job opportunities that come from all this effort. Lots of great resources again. The first one here is a wonderful manual from New Jersey, Association of New Jersey Recyclers, developed many years ago for their Sustainable Resource Management training program. Really excellent overview of about 100 pages of details of how municipal recycling programs work and the economics of those. From a business perspective, the WasteWise resource management website is particularly helpful in how to structure and align contracts and rate structures and how you pay for your services for waste and recycling contracts. For communities, the incentive programs for local government recycling waste reduction have examples of different ways communities have influenced the marketplace by the way they structure garbage rates, franchise fees, state recycling fees, permit fees, business taxes, and how that can be a way to get to zero waste. Other resources here are really helpful as well. This report for basic reading is a good overview of the potential of creating 1.5 million jobs in America by focusing on doubling our national recycling rate by 2030. That's where it highlighted that 80% of all jobs in America in recycling all materials in America that are recycled are processed and used overseas. And in that same report, they highlighted that 49% of all jobs in recycling are in the manufacturing sector. And those are the high-paying, good-paying jobs. So we're shipping our resources overseas for the good-paying jobs to be done overseas. That's what we need to change through zero waste initiatives to bring those jobs home and redevelop our local economy and local use of materials. Contracts and incentives are key tools for doing that by municipalities and by businesses. In the training, we highlight different keys to funding and options for funding, different job impacts, and again, zero waste purchasing as a key tool for achieving that. For local governments, how they design their programs, how they design their contracts with their service providers are really key tools that we go into more detail about, how they structure the fees and taxes and rates, and different policies that require participation, that require standards of performance, that require things to be banned from landfills. These are all types of things that local government can do to change the system to make it move towards zero waste. And we just are underscoring that landfill equals waste. Jobs can be created by pursuing zero waste. And we don't want to waste land, water, and energy resources, money, time, effort. That's all part of what we're moving towards in this zero waste world. Where are the opportunities? We need to design for zero waste. We need to build more manufacturing capacity. We need to purchase and resell materials for zero waste, and package, ship, and market, connecting our zero waste goals with the packaging issues, which is a huge part of the problem. So for future jobs, we ask students to think about how sustainable resource management will help with their job search, how they can incorporate what they've learned about zero waste in their job responsibilities. And one of the things we have emphasized is that there's no one zero waste job out there. There's many jobs that could incorporate zero waste. So students that have gone through the zero waste training have learned something that's of value, whether they're in a community sustainability program, in a sustainable business that is dedicated, or to any business, by they can distinguish themselves by being a leader, by being the go-to person in their business or in their community to help them get to zero waste and get all those wonderful benefits we talked about zero waste bringing. That's the end of the show. Are there any questions? If not, I'll sign off then, and thank you all for participating, and hope your training programs go well.